Gene Hackman wasn't just a Hollywood icon, he was a powerhouse. With iconic performances in The French Connection and Unforgiven, he left an indelible mark on cinema history. Yet after dominating the screen for over 40 years, he disappeared quietly. No farewell tour, no retrospective celebrations, just a sudden, lingering absence. Beneath that silence lies a story of guarded secrets, fractured relationships, and a life deliberately kept in the shadows. In this video, we reveal the startling truth behind Gene Hackman's mysterious passing, the hidden financial troubles he left behind, and why Hollywood, even his own family, appears to have wiped away his legacy. Was it just the inevitability of old age? Or is there a deeper, more unsettling secret at play? If you're intrigued, drop a 1 in the comments. If not, leave a 0. And make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more jaw-dropping revelations. Gene Hackman's daughter now speaks in cryptic, haunting tones, as if uncovering the fading echoes of a titan who once dominated Hollywood. No outpouring of grief, no tearful homage. Leslie Hackman's unsettling, detached response sent ripples through a family already on edge, igniting speculation and drawing relentless reporters like vultures to a long-hidden truth. Hackman was discovered lifeless in a cold, empty home, the air heavy with toxic fumes. Yet the real shock wasn't his death. It was the 2 decades of silence, broken the moment Leslie finally broke hers. The daughter who once stayed hidden now stands at the center of a storm. Yet instead of mourning, her words pierce like knives, unraveling a harsh reality no one wanted to confront. Leslie Hackman isn't honoring Gene Hackman's legacy. She's dismantling it, reducing it to a shadow of its former glory. Beneath her cold stare and cryptic remarks lies a chilling secret, one that could rewrite everything we believed about her father. Gene Hackman, once a towering giant of Hollywood, captivated audiences with iconic roles in The French Connection, Unforgiven, Bonnie and Clyde, and Superman. His image adorned prestigious magazine covers, he commanded red carpets beneath flashing cameras, and he basked in the admiration of millions. Yet after 2004, he vanished. No farewell tour, no heartfelt retirement speech, no final curtain call. He never reappeared at award shows or faced the press again. It was as if a cinematic legend had simply dissolved, his name now echoing only in nostalgic retrospectives and lists of stars from a vanished golden age. He pulled back even more, allowing time to quietly blur his once brilliant legacy from Hollywood's glaring spotlight. In search of peace, Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, 31 years his junior, retreated to Santa Fe, New Mexico. Their $3.8 million sanctuary, nestled among the mountains, became their entire world. No red carpets, no paparazzi, just the 2 of them. 3 devoted dogs and the gentle, unhurried passage of days, far removed from the clamor of stardom. Neighbors in Santa Fe seldom saw Hackman outside in the mornings. Instead, he sat quietly on his porch, coffee in hand, gazing out at the distant mountains. The imposing figure once commanding the screen in a sheriff's uniform had softened into that of a weary old man, his sunken eyes heavy with untold stories. His days felt like a faded film caught in slow motion, each memory, each forgotten scene flickering behind his closed eyes, replaying in a ceaseless loop of a past that refused to let go. Betsy Arakawa, once viewed with doubt by Hackman's family, became the one who stayed by his side the longest. She cared for him with the attentiveness of a dedicated nurse, making sure every pill was taken, every meal prepared. But was her commitment genuine, unconditional love? Or was Betsy, like their isolated Santa Fe home, a refuge on the outside, yet a silent prison where Hackman's loneliness quietly deepened, unseen and unescapable? Close friends who visited Hackman observed a striking transformation after his retreat from Hollywood. He spoke little, steered clear of discussing his career, and never revisited his own films. Any new scripts that managed to reach him were quickly dismissed, often by Betsy before he even had a chance to see them. In a rare interview, Hackman confessed, "I haven't watched my films in years. They're part of the past. They don't belong to me anymore." For 20 years, from 2004 to 2024, Hackman existed like a ghost. His once powerful presence reduced to a distant memory. His name spoken only with a sense of nostalgia. No lavish galas, no red carpets, no interviews. The world caught a rare glimpse of him in 2023 when paparazzi captured a photo of Hackman and Betsy at a modest seafood restaurant. He appeared frail, his frame thinner, his steps unsteady as he leaned on his wife's arm. Yet in that brief moment, the same sharp intensity that electrified the French Connection still flickered beneath the weight of time. Neighbors remember Hackman's house as mostly closed off, its stillness rarely disturbed. Yet on some late nights, muffled arguments seeped through the walls, fragments of tension no one could fully discern. All they knew was that Betsy always seemed to have the last word. An unsettling aura clung to the home, an unspoken heaviness that made passers-by uneasy, as if the very walls guarded secrets too burdensome to be exposed. For 21 years, Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa disappeared from the public eye, their absence a velvet curtain that concealed the final chapter of a storied career while fueling endless speculation. Some believed Hackman fell into a deep depression after stepping away from the spotlight, while others whispered that Betsy kept him isolated, quietly managing his fortune from behind closed doors. Whatever the truth, Hackman seemed to embrace the silence, as if he were deliberately erasing his own name from Hollywood's legacy. In Hollywood, disappearing didn't mean being forgotten, but for Hackman, it was a deliberate act. He refused interviews, ignored invitations, and even declined a Lifetime Achievement Oscar. To many, it was a mystery. Why would a man who dedicated his life to his craft turn his back on it so completely? His silence wasn't just a retreat. It felt like a warning. No one who spent 4 decades under the spotlight could vanish without a trace. What was he hiding? A buried family secret? A shocking will? Or a pain so profound that not even his first wife, Faye Maltese, or his 3 children ever uncovered the truth? When the late-night call came from the Santa Fe police, reporting 2 lifeless bodies found in separate rooms and a mysteriously deceased dog, the quiet suspicions that had hovered for 21 years erupted into a frenzy. Gene Hackman, once a towering Hollywood legend, was now just a name on a coroner's report. The silence that had enveloped his final years had been merely a prelude to something darker, a twisted tragedy that left his daughter, Leslie Ann Hackman, trembling as she gripped his will, tears streaming down her face. The winding dirt roads leading to Gene Hackman's isolated estate on the outskirts of Santa Fe held an eerie, almost forgotten stillness. Unlike the sunlit glamour of California or the brisk air of the East Coast, the high desert sun seemed tired, its faded light more a silent observer than a source of warmth, patiently waiting for something to fracture and fall apart. Perched on a solitary hill, Gene Hackman's million-dollar estate loomed quietly, a fortress of secrets no one dared to breach. Neighbors rarely saw the couple. No leisurely walks, no weekend get-togethers, no appearances at the local church or bustling farmers' markets. When Gene and Betsy did appear, they were only fleeting shadows, slipping past watchful eyes before disappearing behind the imposing iron gate. They say that at dawn, just as the sun began to edge over the mountains, Betsy would quietly step outside with the aging dog. She moved carefully, her gaze sweeping the still, empty landscape, as if wary of unseen eyes. The dog's slow, labored steps seemed to carry the weight of an unspoken burden hanging heavy in the air. Less than 15 minutes later, she would return, gently latching the gate behind her, her touch light and almost cautious, as if afraid to rouse the restless ghosts that haunted Gene Hackman's home. As Gene Hackman's heart weakened, his world shrank to the narrow confines of his home. The only outsider permitted inside was a middle-aged delivery woman, her face lined with quiet sorrow. She never lingered, speaking just a few brief words before leaving. Once, in a low voice, she confided to a neighbor, "They're hiding something big that no one knows." Betsy Arakawa, guarded and intensely private, kept the outside world at a distance. Beyond Gene, she had no close connections, only the heavy, lingering silence that clung to their secluded home like a shadow. Yet a neighbor living just beyond Hackman's fence noticed something strange. Betsy often made hushed phone calls in the backyard. Her voice was too low to fully catch, but now and then fragments drifted through the trees. "He's getting worse. No, we can't let anyone know. This house isn't safe." Every call ended the same way, with a long, weary sigh as if she carried an unbearable burden. Who was on the other end? A family member? Or someone privy to the Hackman family's most guarded secrets? No one knew. But as the calls grew more frequent, the worry etched on Betsy's face only seemed to deepen. Gene Hackman's home, once praised by the media as an architectural gem hidden in the wilderness, carried a persistent, unsettling chill for anyone who entered. It wasn't the desert air or the house's design, it was a deeper, unspoken sorrow that seemed to seep from every corner. The walls were covered with framed photos, yet not a single one showed Hackman's 3 biological children. Instead, only images of him and Betsy filled the space, a meticulously curated collection of their shared memories, as if the past had been deliberately erased. Hackman's children, once heard laughing and playing in the backyard of his Los Angeles home, had long vanished from his life. He never publicly discussed his health, but quiet rumors among neighbors painted a bleak picture: heart disease, arthritis, spinal degeneration. Yet the most haunting ailment wasn't physical. It was the slow, creeping curse that shadowed Hollywood's aging legends. From Marlon Brando to Katharine Hepburn and Greta Garbo, the greatest icons of the Golden Age faced the same cruel fate, fading into obscurity while still alive. For Hackman, a former box-office giant whose name once guaranteed success, becoming just a forgotten footnote in film history may have been the most devastating illness of all. Betsy once confided in a neighbor during a rare conversation, "Gene doesn't watch his old films. He says they belong to another life." With those words, Hackman severed his last connection to Hollywood, leaving his past behind like a discarded script. Yet every night, as the house fell into silence, Betsy would glimpse him standing by the bedroom window, staring out at the distant mountains, quietly murmuring to himself. Those whispers weren't just the wind or fleeting illusions. They were fragments of unfinished conversations between Gene Hackman and the man he used to be, the one who once commanded the screen, convinced his reign would never end. But when the doors closed and Hollywood's glow dimmed, all that remained was an aging man, lost in his million-dollar home. Beyond the iron gates, the world moved on, unaware that Gene Hackman still lingered, his whispers the last fading echoes of a legend yearning to be remembered. The once secluded million-dollar estate in the New Mexico hills, a sanctuary that had hidden whispered secrets and late-night phone calls, now stands as a haunting crime scene. Red and blue police lights flash against the adobe walls, casting ghostly shadows across the quiet desert night. Neighbors gather behind wooden fences, their murmurs mingling with the wind, trying to make sense of the mystery unfolding inside a home that had been silent for so long. The police weren't drawn by frantic calls or desperate screams, only by an unsettling stillness that had settled over the house. It was the drug dealer, a weary-faced woman from down the road, who noticed it first. That unshakable stench. Not just decay, not just chemicals, but something far more unsettling. A suffocating odor that clung to the air, a silent warning that whatever lay inside had been waiting to be discovered. When the door creaked open, investigators weren't met with the chaos of a violent crime scene, but something far more unsettling. Absolute, suffocating silence. Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa lay in separate rooms, their bodies in different poses, yet united by the same eerie stillness. Hackman rested on his back atop the bed, the blanket carefully pulled up to his chest, as if he had simply slipped into sleep after a long, exhausting day. His eyes were closed, his mouth slightly open. No bruises, no signs of struggle, no visible pain. Just the haunting stillness of a man who had quietly slipped away, leaving only silence behind. Just a few steps away, Betsy Arakawa was slumped beside the bed, her body frozen in an unsettling final moment. One hand still gripped the landline phone, an artifact from the early years of their life in the house. The screen displayed no record of an outgoing or incoming call. Had she tried to reach someone? Had she realized, too late, that something was terribly wrong? Her vacant eyes remained fixed on the window, where the last traces of evening light clung to the horizon, as if she had been staring at something just beyond the glass, when death quietly claimed her. When the police arrived, Gene and Betsy's 3 dogs were still inside. 2 of them were alive, trembling near their owners' lifeless bodies, their eyes red and weary, reflecting a fear they couldn't understand. But the oldest dog, the one Betsy walked each morning, lay dead in the hallway between the 2 bedrooms. There were no signs of struggle, no blood, no visible wounds. It appeared to have simply laid down and never risen again. But why did 2 survive while 1 did not? Was the gas not potent enough to kill them all? Or had something occurred before the fumes filled the house? A tragic accident, or a calculated decision? The forensic team meticulously examined the heating system, gas lines, and appliances, searching for the source of the deadly fumes. What they found sent a chill through the investigation. No carbon monoxide leaks, no malfunctioning stoves, no faulty wiring. The toxic gas that had filled the house hadn't resulted from any natural failure. Then came the most disturbing revelation. traces of hydrogen sulfide, a poisonous gas with a sickening stench of rotten eggs, yet nearly undetectable in low concentrations. But where had it come from? It wasn't seeping from the plumbing or rising from the drains. Instead, the evidence suggested something far more sinister. It had been introduced deliberately, either from outside the house or, more disturbingly, from within. Gene Hackman died without a single mark on his body. No struggle, no sign of distress. Betsy Arakawa met the same fate, but with one haunting difference. She died clutching the phone, as if desperately trying to reach someone. Could their deaths have been orchestrated to appear as a tragic accident, a simple gas leak? Yet the presence of hydrogen sulfide, a gas that had no place in their home, challenged that notion. Questions stacked like the unseen walls that had concealed their secluded lives. Who first noticed the fumes? Did Gene slip away first? Or did Betsy witness his final moments before succumbing herself? And in those last, desperate seconds, who had she tried to call? If this was murder, it wasn't impulsive. It was cold, calculated, and executed by someone who knew how to turn silence into a weapon. The bitter twist of fate was that Gene Hackman's children, despite their estrangement from their father, had long braced themselves for the inevitable. At 94, his passing felt like a matter of time. Yet no one expected it to unfold this way. No one foresaw that Betsy, 3 decades his junior, would be taken too. A woman who should have been organizing his farewell, not joining him in it. Had they remained a close-knit couple, or had they quietly drifted apart within the cavernous, isolated mansion? What were the last words they shared? Were Betsy's whispered phone calls connected to the unseen threat that claimed them both, or had she unknowingly been caught in a darker web? As investigators gently covered their bodies with white sheets, the million-dollar estate fell into a heavier silence. But now, the secrets it held no longer lay buried. They hung in the air, exposed and unresolved. Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa's funeral mirrored the quiet isolation of their later years. No media frenzy, no glaring spotlights, just a small circle of family gathered in muted grief. Yet behind the solemnity, unease crackled. Glances darted cautiously between those present, silent questions lingering unanswered. The shock of losing both Gene and Betsy so suddenly was disconcerting enough, but the real jolt came when Hackman's personal lawyer stepped forward. The atmosphere thickened. Just months before their deaths, Gene had revised his will, not a simple reallocation of assets, but a labyrinth of unexpected financial maneuvers, obscure investments, and perplexing transactions. More troubling, however, were the long-hidden family tensions the will exposed, old wounds left to fester, now poised to tear open in the wake of loss. The lawyer broke the seal of the envelope with deliberate care, his composed voice wavering slightly under the weight of what was to come. Gene Hackman's estate, an impressive $80 million portfolio of stocks, properties, cash, and shadowy investment accounts, was divided in a way that left the room stunned. Nearly 40% went to Betsy Arakawa, his wife over 3 decades his junior. Hackman's 3 biological children shared a mere 20%, a figure far below their expectations. 10% went to an arts education charity, a decision that raised no suspicion. But it was the remaining 30% that sent an icy wave through the room, a substantial sum buried in a cryptic trust, inaccessible for a decade, its beneficiary left unnamed. A tense, uneasy silence followed. Why the mystery? Who was meant to claim such a large share of Hackman's legacy? And most pressing of all, what had he been so determined to conceal? Who was the unknown beneficiary, and why had Gene arranged his estate with such deliberate complexity? The lawyer's explanation unraveled a crucial detail. Because Gene and Betsy had died almost simultaneously, the exact sequence of their deaths couldn't be confirmed. According to New Mexico inheritance law, when no clear order of death can be determined, it's as though both parties passed away together. As a result, Betsy's inheritance didn't transfer to her own family. It cycled back to Gene's estate. In an instant, the landscape of the inheritance changed. The three children, originally left with a modest 20%, now had a claim to a much larger portion of the estate. Yet, it wasn't that straightforward. Betsy, whom they had never fully accepted, remained an inescapable presence, her influence etched into their father's will. At the funeral, they held their emotions in check, faces composed and unreadable. But in the privacy of the lawyer's office, long-buried grievances, simmering resentments, and years of unspoken betrayal erupted, transforming Gene Hackman's final legacy into a battlefield of clashing interests. Leslie Hackman, Gene's eldest daughter, finally broke the strained silence, her voice wavering between grief and bitterness. "Betsy was never our mother. Don't expect us to act like she was now." David, Gene's second son, gave a sharp, hollow laugh. 40% to a woman who never gave him children, while his own blood gets crumbs? Unbelievable. Their words hung heavily, carrying the weight of years, awkward holidays, strained small talk, and Betsy's failed efforts to bridge the gap. To Leslie and David, Betsy had always been an outsider, the woman who entered their father's life when he was already a legend, when the wealth and fame were long established. To them, she'd been fortunate, a beneficiary of timing more than love. Yet for Gene, Betsy had been his anchor, the person who stayed when the spotlight faded, when the industry's applause quieted to silence. Had he genuinely trusted her, or had those carefully crafted clauses in his will masked deeper doubts? The truth, it seemed, lay hidden with the unknown beneficiary, waiting to be revealed, threatening to unravel everything they thought they knew. As investigators sifted through Gene Hackman's financial records, they stumbled upon an unexpected revelation: anonymous investment accounts connected to industries far from the glitz of Hollywood. Despite never publicly expressing interest in cryptocurrency, Hackman had significant stakes in companies focused on artificial intelligence and biological data. Yet the most startling discovery came from a recent, discreet transaction. Just weeks before his death, Hackman had quietly funneled nearly $2 million into an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Why would a retired actor, approaching the twilight of his life, suddenly move such a substantial amount? Was it a calculated investment, a protective measure, or a last effort to conceal something he knew he wouldn't have the time to fully explain? The mystery deepened. Had Gene Hackman been involved in something far more complex than anyone had realized? Or was this the final unspoken chapter of a life spent in the public eye, yet never fully known? Leslie sat motionless in the car, her gaze fixed yet unfocused, as silent tears slipped down her face. Her grief ran deeper than the loss of her father. It was the shattering realization that the man she had idolized, the father who once shared popcorn and movies with her on quiet Sunday afternoons, had lived a life veiled in secrets. The warmth of his presence had concealed a labyrinth of hidden accounts, enigmatic investments, and financial maneuvers that felt more like a riddle than a legacy. "Maybe we never really knew him," Leslie whispered, her voice barely audible over the steady hum of the engine. The multi-million-dollar inheritance, instead of being a bond that held the fractured family together, had become a weapon, severing what little connection remained. A vast fortune left behind, but at a price no wealth could ever mend. Gene Hackman was never the typical Hollywood heartthrob. He didn't have the sculpted looks of a leading man or the effortless magnetism of the romantic idols of his time. What set him apart was something much more elusive, an intense, undeniable presence. Hackman wasn't merely an actor, he was a force of nature, commanding each frame with performances that left an indelible mark on cinema. In the 1980s, as part of Hollywood's elite in the Glorious Seven, he stood as a king without a crown. From The French Connection to Mississippi Burning and Unforgiven, Hackman didn't just portray characters, he lived them. He was the rugged, unyielding essence of American identity, the weight of a fading dream etched into the lines of his face. Through him, audiences glimpsed the grit of a vanishing era, the slow erosion of the American dream, and the silent despair of those left behind. And then, much like those forgotten souls, he quietly slipped into the shadows, leaving behind a legacy that still resonates. In 2004, Gene Hackman quietly stepped away from Hollywood, not with a grand send-off or a defining final performance, but with a subdued acceptance. Officially, it was for health reasons, but everyone sensed a deeper truth. The Hollywood he had once shaped no longer had a place for him. The industry had transformed into a conveyor belt of blockbusters, favoring fresh faces, superhero franchises, and CGI spectacles over the raw, unpolished intensity that actors like Hackman brought to the screen. The age of weathered, commanding actors, those who could carry a film on sheer talent alone, had all but disappeared. Producers who once vied for Hackman's presence stopped calling. Directors who had admired his craft now pursued the next easily marketable star. Hackman didn't just retire. It was Hollywood that had changed, leaving behind the legends who built it. In their place stood a new machine, one that had no space for giants of his kind. After leaving Hollywood, Gene Hackman and Betsy sought refuge in New Mexico, a place far from red carpets, star-studded galas, and the echoes of a career that had shaped cinema history. Many wondered why a legend of his caliber would choose such a secluded, unremarkable life. The answer was both simple and heartbreaking. In Hollywood, he was no longer needed. In New Mexico, no one knew who he was. What began as a peaceful retirement in a luxurious desert villa slowly transformed into a gilded cage. Hackman and Betsy lived in near total isolation, their connections to the outside world fraying year by year. Interview requests, once plentiful, dwindled until they vanished completely. No Lifetime Achievement Awards arrived, no grand tributes celebrated his contribution, no final acknowledgement of a man who had once defined a generation of filmmaking. Hollywood had moved on, and the media followed, quietly erasing his name from its history books. Gene Hackman wasn't just forgotten, he had become invisible. Gene Hackman spent his final years as a ghost king, once a reigning force in Hollywood, now forgotten by the very industry he had helped define. The harshest truth was that his most powerful, most genuine performance would remain unseen. There was no script to guide him, no director to capture his essence, just the quiet of four walls, a few aging dogs, and a wife who watched the daily, silently witnessing the slow unraveling of the man she had once adored. Hackman had never feared death. He once confessed, "If I die alone one day, I won't be surprised. That's the fate of those who linger too long in the limelight." Yet his departure felt like more than the natural end of a long life. It felt like a verdict. A quiet, unyielding sentence handed down by an industry that had no tolerance for age, no space for those who refused to conform to its relentless demands. Hackman didn't simply fade away. He was cast out, punished for daring to live life on his own terms. Gene Hackman didn't die from old age or illness. He died because Hollywood had already discarded him long before his heart gave out. The industry that once celebrated him only did so when his name filled theaters, when his performances won awards, when he was a commodity worth selling. That admiration was as fleeting as a matinee ticket, cheap, temporary, and easily forgotten. When Hackman could no longer pull in box office numbers, no longer deliver captivating performances or headline-grabbing interviews, Hollywood's affection disappeared. It was never true love. It was a transaction, conditional and self-serving. His value was measured by his marketability, not by the decades of craft he dedicated to the screen. And when he became inconvenient, when he no longer fit the mold of a marketable star, Hollywood did what it always does best. It erased him. Gene Hackman wasn't an isolated case, just another name on the long list of Hollywood giants left behind when the industry's appetite for them waned. Peter O'Toole, the iconic face of Lawrence of Arabia, slipped away with barely a whisper, his death scarcely noticed. Burt Reynolds, once a box office titan and sex symbol, spent his final years battling debt and dwindling relevance. Mickey Rourke, a defiant talent who once held it all, found himself clawing for parts in an industry that had already deemed him obsolete. Hollywood's love has never been timeless. It's a transaction with an expiration date, an illusion sustained only as long as the spotlight burns bright. And when the lights fade, when the cameras stop, all that's left is a silence that echoes louder than applause ever could. Gene Hackman carried the weight of a generation. Actors who poured their souls into their craft, who defied Hollywood's manufactured mold, and who aged with dignity rather than succumbing to the industry's obsession with youth. His passing wasn't just a personal loss or a farewell for cinephiles. It was a harsh indictment of a system that builds legends only to discard them when they no longer serve a purpose. In her final words, Betsy captured the bitter truth. Gene never forgot who he was. It was Hollywood that forgot. The verdict on Hackman's career had been delivered long before his final breath. His death wasn't a sudden erasure. It was a slow, methodical fading, the industry chipping away at his legacy piece by piece, replacing him with fresher, more marketable faces. By the end, all that was left was the silence, a silence that spoke louder than any tribute ever could, a silence reserved for legends Hollywood pretended had never existed. Gene Hackman passed away on a quiet afternoon, without headlines or a grand farewell. The news of his death drifted through the media as quietly as the last years he spent in the vast, desolate landscape of New Mexico, a place where his name had long ceased to echo in Hollywood's halls. There were no national tributes, no mourning crowds leaving flowers at his gate, no candlelit vigils. Just a few brief news reports, some dry career retrospectives, and then silence. Once a cinematic titan, Hackman had become just another name lost in the fog of time, buried beneath legal documents, forgotten tax returns, and the impersonal calculations of his final will. Yet behind the paperwork, beyond the silence, there were still remnants, whispers of unfinished stories, fragments of a life that had more to tell, secrets waiting to be uncovered. Hackman's will didn't merely distribute his multi-million-dollar estate. It cracked open a Pandora's box of questions. A concealed portion of his wealth, tangled in offshore investments and obscure foreign transactions, formed a financial maze so intricate that even his own lawyer struggled to make sense of it. Why would a man who had publicly criticized tax loopholes quietly funnel assets through overseas accounts? Why, in the years leading up to his death, did he repeatedly amend his will, cutting off certain relatives, adding unfamiliar names, and directing unexplained sums to an anonymous NGO? Gene Hackman didn't just leave behind a fortune. He left a puzzle, one that grew more complex with each detail revealed. The deeper investigators dug, the more elusive the truth became, casting shadows over the legacy of a man Hollywood had already forgotten. Gene Hackman's death was initially deemed the result of old age and chronic heart disease. Yet quiet rumors began circulating in local New Mexico newspapers, a darker theory suggesting that toxic gas had seeped into his secluded home. A small yet detectable amount of carbon monoxide was found inside the estate. Investigators speculated that the aging ventilation system, while technically functional, might have slowly poisoned him, leading to fatigue-induced hallucinations and accelerating his decline. What made it all the more unsettling was that the system had been inspected just months before Hackman's passing. No leaks had been detected, no red flags raised. Was this a tragic accident, or had someone deliberately turned his multi-million-dollar retreat into a death trap? Could his tangled financial dealings have played a role in his mysterious end? Local authorities launched an investigation, but as Hollywood moved on, so did the media. The headlines faded, the speculation died down, and the case, like Hackman himself, slipped quietly into silence. Leslie stood before the cameras, tears streaming down her face, not just mourning the loss of her father, but grappling with the bitter sting of betrayal. After years of distance, she had believed they had finally found their way back to each other. Yet Hackman's final will painted a different picture, detached, calculated, as if their reconciliation had been an illusion. When a legend falls, it isn't just grief that follows. It's betrayal, fractured families, and wounds that time can't heal. If Hollywood were a house, Gene Hackman had laid its foundation brick by brick. Yet in his final moments, Hollywood never looked back. There was no grand memorial, no dedicated retrospectives, not even a brief tribute at an awards show. Even worse, in industry circles, younger actors whispered, "Who is Gene Hackman?" The place that once revered him had moved on, its gaze fixed on new faces, marketable names, and the next fleeting sensation. Because in Hollywood, the line between immortality and irrelevance is razor thin, and Gene Hackman, once a king, had been left behind in the dust. Gene Hackman, once revered as Hollywood's unthroned king, died a forgotten man on the very ground where he had built his legacy. The industry that had once celebrated him had long since moved on, and his passing was reduced to a brief headline, lost beneath waves of trivial celebrity gossip. The stories went untold. The recordings remained unwatched. His family stayed silent. The public barely noticed. As the years slipped by, Hackman's name faded, his secrets buried alongside him, at least for now. Because in Hollywood, nothing stays buried forever. All it takes is someone with enough ambition or enough ruthlessness to dig them back up. One day, those hidden recordings may resurface, and when they do, the world may see that Gene Hackman's death wasn't just the result of age or illness, but the crushing weight of the dark secrets that followed him to the end. Yet that day remains distant. For now, the curtain has closed, and Gene Hackman, the forgotten king, haunts Hollywood as a ghost in its shadow. He is gone, his decaying truths buried with him. What he left behind was not a legacy, but a curse. A lingering echo of whispers, suspicion, and wounds that time will never heal. Will the truth about Gene Hackman ever be revealed, or will it remain one of Hollywood's greatest unsolved mysteries? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. The death of Gene Hackman, a legendary figure in Hollywood, has sparked an unresolved mystery that still lingers. Official reports claim his passing was due to natural causes, like age and illness. But the strange circumstances of his death, coupled with the violent assault on his daughter, Leslie Hackman, have raised numerous questions. Is there an unseen force at play behind these events? And why are those closest to him hiding the truth? With a trail of suspicious clues, a disabled security system, and bizarre actions after Gene Hackman's death, this case grows more complicated by the minute. Who is really behind it all? And does Leslie Hackman, the only one left with the secret, have the strength to reveal the truth? If you're intrigued, drop a 1 in the comments. Want to dive deeper into this mystery? Leave a 0 and join us as we uncover the details in this video. Gene Hackman's death was initially seen as the end of a Hollywood icon, but it quickly ignited a whirlwind of mysteries that kept the public buzzing. While official reports claimed he died from old age and illness, hinting at Alzheimer's in his later years, Leslie Hackman, his daughter, swiftly rejected these details. She emphatically stated that her father was in perfect health, mentally sharp, and showed no signs of dementia. This contradiction wasn't just a minor error, it raised a much larger question. Was someone attempting to conceal the truth or even manipulate the narrative surrounding his death? The more one investigates, the stranger the details become. For instance, the security camera system at Gene Hackman's mansion was disabled just before his death. This is highly suspicious, especially considering that in cases involving celebrities, surveillance footage is often a vital tool for verifying the facts. In this case, however, all the surveillance footage vanished without a trace. This opens up two possibilities. Either it was a targeted attack, or someone within the family intentionally erased the evidence. The family's response also raised eyebrows. Leslie Hackman swiftly claimed her father wasn't suffering from dementia, despite the absence of any public medical records confirming his condition. The conflicting statements from family members have left the public questioning who is telling the truth and who is trying to cover it up. Suspicion grew even stronger when it was revealed that the mansion's advanced security system couldn't have been deactivated without someone inside tampering with it. This suggested that there was a plan in place for Hackman to die a natural death, with erasing the security footage being the perfect way to cover up the truth. The situation took an even darker turn when Leslie Hackman, his daughter, was attacked in the very same house, raising even more questions about a potential conspiracy surrounding the Hollywood legend's death. After Gene Hackman's funeral, Leslie Hackman was attacked by an unknown assailant inside her father's house. What was most alarming was that the attacker left no clear evidence behind. Despite the assault, nothing of value was taken, which led to the theory that the target was not her belongings, but Leslie herself. Was this a warning? Could the person behind the attack have been trying to ensure that Leslie wouldn't reveal any vital information about her father's death? When the police arrived, they found signs of a struggle, but there was no direct evidence pointing to the identity of the attacker. During a subsequent interrogation, Leslie recounted the details of the attack. She described the stranger as emerging from the shadows, moving swiftly and forcefully, making it clear that this was no ordinary thief. He had no interest in stealing anything. His only target was Leslie. He lunged at her with such force that she was knocked to the floor. Leslie fought back, leading to a brief but intense struggle. She noted that the attacker remained silent throughout, but at one point he paused as if reconsidering whether to continue. Then, unexpectedly, he released her and disappeared into the night, leaving everything untouched. This is especially important because, had it been a robbery, the attacker would have likely taken something valuable. However, nothing was stolen, and the attacker didn't seem intent on causing serious harm to Leslie. This points to the possibility that the incident wasn't a typical robbery, but rather an act meant as a warning. Immediately after the incident, Leslie contacted the police. When the investigative team arrived, they observed signs of a struggle, but found little concrete evidence. There was no blood, no unusual fingerprints, and no objects left behind as potential clues. While Leslie had fallen and sustained minor injuries, there were no indications that the attacker had intended to kill her. If the assailant had truly meant to harm her, he could have easily done so while Leslie was defenseless. Instead, he released her and fled quickly, suggesting he didn't want to escalate the situation further. The police also raised questions about the security camera system being deactivated just before the incident. This couldn't have been a coincidence. Someone must have planned ahead, understood the home's security system, and knew how to cover their tracks. One of the police's initial theories was that the attack could be connected to a family dispute over Hackman's estate. However, there was no evidence that Leslie had received any prior threats, nor was there any sign of open conflict within the family involving her. This only added to the unpredictability of the case. Another line of investigation focused on Gene Hackman's relationships leading up to his death, questioning whether there were individuals or organizations he had been involved with, and if Leslie might have unknowingly uncovered something significant. If this were true, the attack could have been a warning to her not to dig too deeply into her father's death. If Leslie had discovered something crucial about his passing and intended to investigate before notifying the police, she could have unknowingly played a key role in the case. With a string of mysterious details surrounding Gene Hackman's death and Leslie Hackman's attack, a crucial question emerges. Who is behind these events? One compelling theory suggests that both Gene Hackman's death and Leslie's attack weren't random occurrences, but instead part of a larger hidden agenda. The evidence points to a carefully orchestrated plot aimed at concealing something Hackman may have known before his death. Hackman wasn't just a legendary actor, he was also a prominent figure in the film industry, with roles that often hinted at political and social secrets. This raises the question of whether he unknowingly became entangled in dangerous relationships outside the industry. Unverified sources claim that Hackman had been involved in independent investigations into sensitive issues, potentially making him a target for powerful organizations. FBI documents also reveal that some of Hackman's close friends reported he expressed growing concern and unease in his final years, hinting at deeper troubles. Gene Hackman, known for his discretion and avoidance of Hollywood scandals, became more cautious in his later years. He once confided in a friend that there were things best left unsaid, but sometimes the truth had to come to light. These words not only reveal Hackman's growing anxiety, but also suggest he may have been harboring a significant secret, one he knew could be perilous if exposed. Hackman's death has drawn comparisons to the unusual deaths of individuals who sought to expose secrets about underground organizations. A notable example is Gary Webb, the investigative journalist who uncovered the CIA's ties to drug cartels. Webb was found dead with 2 gunshot wounds to the head, and while the incident was ruled a suicide, many believe he was silenced. Another case is Michael Hastings, an investigative journalist who exposed military scandals, who died in a suspicious car accident believed to have been caused by remote interference. If Hackman truly uncovered secrets tied to underground activities, financial dealings, a political scandal, or even a government conspiracy, his death may not have been a mere coincidence. Those responsible may have taken advantage of his age and health to cover up the truth. If Leslie, Hackman's daughter, uncovered something crucial, she could be the next target. The most suspicious aspect of the incident is the attack on Leslie. If the intention was to kill her, the attacker had ample time and opportunity to do so, yet they only made a threat without inflicting serious harm. This could be interpreted in two ways. Either the organization behind it didn't want to attract public attention, or they aimed to send a clear message that Leslie should stop investigating her father's death. Moreover, the deactivation of the security system before the attack is not a coincidence. It clearly suggests the attacker had knowledge of surveillance technology. This becomes even more suspicious if there was inside help, possibly from family members or security personnel. Another theory worth considering is that this incident could be tied to a conflict or secret within the Hackman family. As previously mentioned, there is a clear contradiction in the family members' statements about Gene Hackman's health. While his eldest daughter claimed he had Alzheimer's, Leslie strongly denied it. This contradiction is more than just a matter of memory lapses or personal opinions. It could point to an internal conspiracy aimed at altering Hackman's will or gaining control of his assets. If he were declared to have dementia, any decisions he made in his final years could be deemed invalid, allowing other family members to seize control of his estate and inheritance. In this scenario, Leslie might have discovered changes in her father's legal documents, making her a threat to those trying to conceal the truth. The attack could have been a warning to stop her from investigating further or even an attempt to remove her from the inquiry. Family disputes over assets are among the most common causes of conflict. No one can deny that Hackman was one of the greatest movie stars of the 20th century. But alongside his fame, he also built an immense fortune, estimated to be worth tens of millions of dollars. His assets included real estate, film royalties, investment stocks, and undisclosed financial holdings. One might assume that after his passing, this legacy would be distributed openly according to his wishes. However, what was surprising is that Gene Hackman made significant changes in the final months of his life, altering the distribution of much of his fortune away from his biological children. According to documents from Hackman's representative lawyer, just months before his death, Hackman made notable amendments to his will. These changes not only reshaped how his estate would be divided, but also sparked a series of questions about the true motives of those influencing these decisions. Initially, Hackman's will had divided his assets relatively equally among his children and several charitable organizations. However, in the latest update to his will, a significant portion of Hackman's estate was no longer allocated to Leslie, Elizabeth, or other close family members. Instead, it was transferred into an anonymous fund. The identity of the final beneficiary remains unknown, adding even more complexity and intrigue to the case. Who is really behind this anonymous fund? If Hackman truly intended to leave his fortune to an investment or charitable cause, why didn't he publicly name the fund's manager or specify its purpose? Legal experts suggest that this fund could be a way to conceal the true identity of the actual beneficiary. If that's the case, someone may have heavily influenced Hackman's decisions just before his death, possibly even orchestrating events to ensure he couldn't alter his will. When the will was made public, it sparked a wave of outrage within Hackman's family. Sources close to the family revealed that Leslie, in particular, was furious upon discovering her inheritance had been significantly reduced. Even more striking is the fact that Leslie had a heated argument with her father just months before his passing. The argument between Leslie and her father, according to some witnesses, was directly tied to the issue of inheritance. Their strained relationship over the years suggested that Leslie might have been trying to secure a larger share of the estate. Hackman's will was amended shortly after, and Leslie's unusual behavior following her father's death only added fuel to the fire. This has led many to wonder if she had any involvement in his sudden passing. Leslie's actions only deepened suspicions. After hearing about her father's death, rather than showing grief or staying to assist with the investigation, she quickly vanished from the media spotlight. Security footage later revealed her returning to the Hackman estate in the middle of the night, collecting documents and leaving quickly after a mysterious fire broke out nearby, which resulted in some of the papers being burned. These documents are suspected to include the will or other crucial financial papers. If Leslie truly had nothing to hide, why would she behave this way? On top of that, Leslie avoided cooperating with the police when they requested her assistance in investigating Hackman's estate. She made numerous excuses to delay providing information, hired her own lawyer, and cut off most communication with family members. The police also scrutinized several unusual financial transactions in Hackman's accounts just before his death, and, coincidentally, a large sum of money had been transferred into accounts linked to Leslie. This raises a troubling question. Could she have influenced Hackman's will for personal gain? And if so, was Hackman's death truly a natural event, or was it part of some orchestrated plot? Public opinion has sharply divided into two camps. One believes Leslie is simply trying to protect her reputation and avoid being caught in baseless rumors, while the other suspects she is directly involved in the incident. The contradictions in her statements, her behavior immediately following Gene Hackman's death, and especially the sudden changes to his will all point to the possibility of a conspiracy behind Hackman's death. If Leslie is truly not involved, why wouldn't she cooperate with the police? Why would she destroy documents and fail to react like a grieving daughter after her father's death? And why was she calm enough to have lunch with her sister right after hearing about his passing? These unanswered questions continue to fuel suspicion surrounding her role in the case. The deeper the investigation goes, the more strange details surface. Another theory worth considering is, if Leslie isn't behind the changes in Hackman's will, then who is? It could be a mysterious figure who manipulated the situation, exploiting the strained relationship between Hackman and his daughter to redirect the assets in their favor. The anonymous fund Hackman left behind might not just be a financial tool, but also a way to hide the true beneficiary's identity. Leslie's attack may not have been a random event, but rather a calculated warning to stop her from interfering with the real estate matters. This is a common tactic in family disputes over large estates, using threats or violence to push a family member out of the equation. A final hypothesis could tie back to Hackman's past. While he was primarily an actor, Hackman starred in numerous films dealing with politics, crime, and conspiracies. If he unknowingly uncovered a major secret, such as a financial scandal or corruption plot, his death might not have been accidental. Dark forces could have wanted Hackman silenced for good. The FBI has met with entrepreneurs, politicians, individuals in finance, and even figures from the underground Hollywood world, an intersection of art and power. If Gene Hackman had ever been involved in an independent investigation or had ties to powerful individuals, his death might have been orchestrated to stop him from revealing anything. Looking at similar cases from the past, where famous figures, ranging from politicians to musicians, business people and actors, died under mysterious circumstances only to be eventually forgotten, raises even more suspicions about the true nature of Hackman's passing. Could Hackman have been the victim of such a conspiracy? If Gene Hackman had tried to expose the truth before his death, Leslie might be the only one who knows what he uncovered. If her father confided in her about his discovery, she could be holding a secret that someone is desperate to keep buried. If she knows, she could also be at risk. Analyzing the evidence and traces at the crime scene is vital to unravel these theories. A case can't be based solely on speculation. Clear, concrete evidence is needed to uncover the truth. The police have gathered several key clues from the scene, Leslie Hackman's testimony, and other factors related to the case. Here are the key points to analyze in order to uncover who is behind this incident. When the police arrived at the scene of the attack at Gene Hackman's house, they found several suspicious signs. First, there were signs of a struggle, but the level of violence was low, suggesting that the attacker didn't intend to kill Leslie, but rather aimed to threaten her. The belongings in the house were largely undisturbed, indicating that the attack wasn't a break-in for theft. A crucial factor is that the security system had been disabled just before the attack occurred. In typical attacks, security cameras would capture images of the intruder, but in this case, all the data was lost. This suggests that the attacker had knowledge of technology or received assistance from someone within the family or someone with access to the security system. The police also observed that there were no signs of forced entry or unlocked doors from the outside. The doors and windows showed no evidence of being opened before the attack, indicating that the intruder had legal access to the house or possessed a key. This raises the question of who let the attacker in or whether Leslie was being monitored and attacked immediately upon entering the house. The signs of a struggle were confined to a specific area with no evidence of a prolonged chase or fight. This suggests that the attacker acted deliberately, launching a sudden attack to create panic, then quickly fleeing before Leslie could react more forcefully. The behavior of the attacker is crucial in determining their motive. According to Leslie's description, the attacker didn't say a word throughout the encounter, which can be interpreted in two ways. Either he didn't want to be recognized by his voice, or this was a premeditated attack with no intention of communication. An important detail is that the attacker didn't try to seriously harm Leslie. If his goal was to kill her, he had enough time to do so, but instead, he stopped midway, almost as if sending a warning message. This type of behavior is common in cases involving threats or attempts to silence someone. Witnesses indicate that the attacker left the scene without taking any valuables, suggesting that the motive was not financial. If this had been a robbery, the attacker could have easily taken valuable assets from the house, but the fact that nothing was stolen points to a completely different motive, perhaps to pressure Leslie into halting her investigation into her father's death. Another possibility is that the attacker was hired to carry out the act, but hesitated at the last minute. If it had been a professional hitman, he wouldn't have stopped halfway, but if he was simply hired to send a warning, his actions make perfect sense. In addition to Leslie Hackman and family members, other individuals may be involved in this case. Gene Hackman's lawyers, who worked with him in his final years, might have knowledge of the legal documents he signed. If there were any changes made to his will or assets, they could hold crucial information. Moreover, security personnel and staff working for the Hackman family should also be investigated. If the camera system was disabled just before the attack, who had access to it. If it wasn't an external breach, someone from within may have assisted the attacker. Another important point to consider is whether Gene Hackman encountered any legal or financial troubles before his death. If he had investments or associations with questionable business organizations, his death might not have been entirely natural, but instead linked to powerful forces seeking to silence him. Despite gathering substantial evidence, there are still significant gaps in this case that remain unresolved, leaving many questions unanswered. Although many clues have been uncovered, the case remains unresolved due to numerous unanswered questions. The traces at the scene, the disabling of the security system, and the attacker's behavior all suggest that this was not a random incident. To move forward with the investigation, there are several directions the police could continue to explore to uncover the truth behind Leslie Hackman's attack and Gene Hackman's mysterious death. One of the most crucial steps is to examine the security system data. Although the surveillance cameras at Gene Hackman's house were disabled just before the attack, there is still a possibility that data logs exist on remote servers or storage systems from the security company. In modern security systems, data can be automatically stored on remote servers rather than just on local devices. If the police can retrieve data from this system, they may be able to determine who accessed the system or who intentionally disabled the cameras before the attack, which could help identify the perpetrator and whether anyone within Hackman's family or circle of acquaintances assisted in this act. Another crucial line of investigation is to thoroughly examine Gene Hackman's legal documents. If there were any unusual changes in his will or financial decisions before his death, this could have been the primary motive behind the incident. One of the most suspicious signs is the contradiction in family members' testimonies regarding Hackman's health. If he wasn't truly suffering from memory loss, as some suggested, it's possible that someone exploited his age to manipulate his assets. Reviewing his asset records, will, and financial transactions in the final months of Hackman's life will help determine if any unusual activities occurred and, more importantly, who benefited from these changes. An essential factor not to overlook is investigating Gene Hackman's external relationships. Throughout his career, Hackman wasn't just a film actor. He also had many connections in other fields, including finance and media. If he had been involved in an independent investigation or had ties to any organization before his death, his passing might not have been natural. Cases involving influential figures often have hidden aspects that the public cannot immediately see. If Hackman truly uncovered a secret and intended to reveal it, it could have made him a target who needed to be silenced. Additionally, an important aspect of the investigation is analyzing the psychology and behavior of the attacker. According to Leslie Hackman's testimony, the attacker did not intend to kill her, but only wanted to send a warning message. This suggests that he may not have been acting alone, but could have been following orders from someone else. In cases involving threats, the attacker usually avoids leaving obvious traces and refrains from taking excessive actions that might draw attention. If this was a murder attempt, the attacker had the opportunity to carry it out but chose not to, raising the question of who had the motive to warn Leslie. She knew, or was about to discover, something that made her a target. If the police can determine who stands to benefit from Leslie's silence, the list of suspects could narrow significantly. With all the details analyzed, the most important question remains: can this case be solved? Currently, the case remains unclear. There are no specific witnesses, no direct evidence of the attacker's identity, and too many theories still being proposed. However, one thing is certain: Leslie Hackman is in danger. If she truly holds the secret of her father's death, she is likely to continue facing threats in the near future. This not only raises concerns about Leslie's personal safety, but also implies that certain forces are determined to cover up the truth at any cost. A realistic possibility is that this case will gradually fade into obscurity, much like many other mysterious cases involving famous figures in Hollywood and the upper echelons of society. There have been numerous instances where suspicious deaths were never properly explained. If those behind this case truly hold power, they could manipulate the investigation and ensure that the truth remains buried. Distorting forensic results, bribing witnesses, or simply leaving the case unresolved are all scenarios that could easily unfold. However, there's another possibility. If Leslie is resolute in her quest to uncover the truth and find solid proof about her father's death, the situation could unfold differently. But this path would also expose her to much greater risks. If she possesses vital information, her pursuit of justice wouldn't be just personal. It would put her in direct conflict with powerful figures who might go to extreme lengths to shield their secrets. Could Leslie uncover the truth in time? Are the clues she has enough to solve the mystery of Gene Hackman's death? And most crucially, who is truly responsible for her attack? These questions might never be fully answered, or perhaps a new discovery will eventually bring the case into focus. But one thing is clear. The truth is still concealed, and those behind this incident will do whatever it takes to keep it that way. If Gene Hackman's death is indeed the result of dark forces, it's not just a single incident. It could be part of a much larger conspiracy. A conspiracy where those pulling the strings will go to any lengths to keep the truth hidden. But the real question is, what will Leslie Hackman do? She can choose to stay silent, accept her fate, and let the past fade. Or she can keep digging for the truth, despite the dangers that lie ahead. If she holds vital knowledge about her father's death, her decision will shape everything. Will the truth ever surface, or will it stay buried beneath the weight of time? The death of Gene Hackman and the attack on Leslie Hackman have left many questions unanswered. Will the truth stay buried forever, or will the missing pieces eventually come to light? What really transpired within the Hackman family? The answer lies in whether Leslie chooses to keep searching for the truth despite the dangers that await her. Who do you think is really behind all of these events? Will Leslie uncover the truth or choose to let the past go? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss any thrilling and captivating videos. See you in the next one. The mysterious story surrounding the death of Hollywood legend Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, has shocked the public. Will the truth ever be revealed? Gene Hackman's daughter, Leslie Hackman, was forced to face intense questioning in court, where she had to confess things that had never been disclosed before. What did she know about her father's condition? And are there dark secrets hidden behind the deaths of the two? If you want to learn more about the chilling mystery surrounding Gene Hackman and his wife's deaths, don't miss any important details. Be sure to like, share this video, and subscribe to the channel for the latest updates on this case. The tense atmosphere hung over the courtroom as all eyes turned to Leslie Hackman, the daughter of Hollywood legend Gene Hackman. She stood there, her face determined but her eyes filled with tension, facing unanswered questions about her father, his final months, and the truth the world had been waiting for. Did she truly know nothing? Or had she been deliberately hiding something all along? In the courtroom's silence, a shocking truth about the deaths of Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, began to unfold. Their deaths were no coincidence, and suspicions about Leslie Hackman concealing the truth, along with evidence buried in Santa Fe, sparked a story without an end. A story that was just beginning. Previously, Leslie had always claimed to have a close relationship with her father, stating that he still called her and they talked every week. She also shared in interviews that her father remained sharp, still discussing the books he had read and the classic films he loved. These statements reassured the public, painting a picture of Gene Hackman, the strong and principled man on screen, still maintaining his sharp mind in his private life. However, this perfect image began to crack when a shocking truth was revealed. Leslie had not seen her father for months before he passed away. Evidence gathered from phone records, documents, and testimonies from those close to Hackman showed that in the nearly year leading up to his death, he had very little contact with his daughter. The calls Leslie mentioned appeared never to have occurred. So was her claim the truth, or just a carefully staged performance to deceive the public? As investigators began to scrutinize the details of Gene Hackman's life in his final days, a strange truth emerged. He had not left his home for months, and neighbors living nearby rarely saw him outside. This starkly contrasted with the image Leslie, his daughter, had painted of her father. If you find this story intriguing and want to learn more about the surprising details, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any videos in this exploration series. Be sure to comment below the video to share your thoughts, and let us know what you think about Gene Hackman's daughter's testimony. We look forward to joining you on the journey to uncover the truth. According to Leslie, Gene Hackman remained a healthy and sharp man until his final days. This description wasn't just a simple statement, but evoked the image of a father still strong enough to enjoy life, albeit perhaps in a private and secluded manner. So why is there such a stark difference between Leslie's account and the reality that investigators uncovered? If Leslie truly had a close and intimate relationship with her father, why didn't she notice this discrepancy? Why didn't she recognize the signs that her father had been completely isolated from the outside world for such an extended period? There are several possibilities that could explain this discrepancy. One possibility is that Leslie may not have been fully aware of her father's level of privacy. It's possible that her visits or contact with him were infrequent or not deep enough to notice that he was living in complete isolation. A person can still appear healthy and sharp in brief conversations, but the reality of complete isolation could be hidden. Another possibility is that Leslie might have had a different perspective on her father's health and sharpness. For her, the fact that her father could still converse, recognize her, and maintain clarity might have been enough for her to conclude that he was still well. She may not have seen the lack of physical activity, or the fact that he never left the house as concerning signs, especially if her father had always been someone who preferred a private, homebound lifestyle. There could also be more complex factors at play in the family dynamic. It's possible that Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, deliberately hid his true condition from Leslie. They may have wanted to protect her from worry, or simply not wanted her to interfere with their private lives. On the other hand, it's also possible that Betsy Arakawa didn't recognize or didn't share with Leslie the extent of this isolation. In the midst of the ambiguity surrounding the investigators' findings on Gene Hackman's death, Leslie Hackman immediately spoke to the press and suggested that her father's death was caused by a gas leak in the house. If this theory were true, it would provide a specific and verifiable explanation for the sudden death of a man who, according to Leslie, was still healthy and sharp. It could also explain why someone who had not left the house for months suddenly passed away in that very home. However, the gas leak theory was completely dismissed by the police, which raised many questions, such as what motivated Leslie to put forward this theory. Was it a personal assumption based on her observations, or was she concealing the truth behind it? Because according to the investigation records presented to Leslie Hackman, the truth was entirely different. What was written in the records left Leslie unable to believe what she was reading. Her father, the strong man she had always admired, had suffered from severe Alzheimer's. He had experienced several heart attacks in the past, something she had never heard of, never imagined, and most importantly, had publicly denied. But now the undeniable evidence was surrounding her. From the very beginning, Leslie had insisted that her father was completely healthy, alert, and showing no signs of illness. She told the press that he still read books and could drive, but the medical reports painted an entirely different picture. According to the findings, Hackman had been suffering from late-stage Alzheimer's for at least 2 years before his death. The signs of memory decline were not new to those close to him. He had forgotten the names of old friends, and even struggled to find his way home, despite living there for over a decade. Some former house staff revealed that Hackman sometimes failed to recognize his wife, Betsy Arakawa. But the most concerning aspect was his cardiovascular condition. The investigation report confirmed that Hackman had suffered multiple heart attacks in the past, but this information had never been made public. One of his treating doctors left a note in his medical records, documenting the history of heart attacks and signs of severe coronary artery disease. What remains unclear is why the family chose to keep his true health status a secret. Reports indicate that his health had deteriorated in the years leading up to his death in 2025. Close friends mentioned that he had become weaker, with increasing difficulty moving, although he remained mentally sharp. When Hackman and his wife were found dead in their home in February 2025, many speculated whether his cardiovascular condition had played a role in his death. Data from his pacemaker confirmed that his heart stopped beating on February 17th, but the cause of death remains unclear. Some experts theorize that his wife, in shock after finding him unresponsive, may have died from heart failure due to stress. Despite facing numerous health challenges, he lived a long and fulfilling life, choosing to spend his final years in peace, away from the Hollywood spotlight. His legacy as an actor remains intact, but it is his resilience in dealing with health issues that is truly admirable. With the surprising discoveries in the ongoing investigation, it seems we may have only scratched the surface of a larger mystery. Were Hackman and his wife truly victims of an unforeseen accident? Or is there something strange and unexplained that the FBI is gradually uncovering? This story will undoubtedly continue to capture public attention and spark debate in the coming months as more details are revealed. If Hackman was truly that frail, why was Leslie completely unaware? As soon as this information was revealed, the media immediately began questioning the authenticity of Leslie's previous claims. A woman who consistently insisted on having a close relationship with her father should have been well aware of his health condition. Yet strangely, she seemed to know nothing about Hackman's illness, or rather, she didn't want to know. Some journalists hypothesized that Leslie lived too far away from her father in his final years to recognize the signs of illness. However, a source from the hospital revealed that throughout Hackman's treatment, Leslie never once visited her father. This raised even more questions about the true nature of Leslie's relationship with her father. Why did Leslie paint such a different picture of him? Clearly, there is much that has yet to be revealed, and one theory is becoming increasingly apparent. Perhaps Leslie wasn't the only one trying to hide the truth. According to some sources, Betsy Arakawa, Gene Hackman's wife, had complete control over information regarding his health. She was the only one who took care of him in his final years and also decided who could contact Hackman and who could not. This has led to speculation that Leslie might not be lying, but simply unaware of the truth because she was never truly by her father's side during that time. However, this raises a bigger question. Why was Gene Hackman so isolated that even his daughter was completely unaware of his condition? As this information spread widely in the media, a strong wave of controversy erupted. Questions were raised about whether Leslie truly loved her father or if she was just trying to protect the family's reputation. Some argued that this could be a typical case of family members of celebrities trying to protect the image of their loved one to the point of denying painful truths. Gene Hackman's fan community became divided into two factions. One side believes that Leslie didn't know about her father's health condition because Betsy, Hackman's wife, deliberately kept the information hidden. However, others suspect that Leslie may have purposely ignored the truth because she didn't want to face the image of a Gene Hackman no longer as strong as he once was. Did Leslie truly not recognize her father's deteriorating health? Or was she trying to conceal his decline? The clear medical evidence contradicts Leslie's claims about Gene Hackman's mental sharpness. Is there a secret being hidden about the health of this Hollywood legend? Regardless of the final outcome, one thing is undeniable. Gene Hackman, the film legend, was no longer the man he once was in the final years of his life. He was no longer the strong, sharp man the public had once adored. While the outside world continued to believe that he was fine, he had to fight alone against a cruel disease, isolated in his own home. Leslie's suspicious actions have only fueled further doubts about her claim that she was unaware of her father's health condition. It is clear that she was aware of the situation through reliable sources, such as conversations with family members. She knew well that her father had not left the house for an extended period. Her strange behavior, such as avoiding contact with the police to the point of being served a subpoena, has only increased public skepticism. A notable detail is that Leslie only appeared after everything had ended. She was not present during Hackman's final days, nor did she participate in caring for him during that difficult period. This has led close acquaintances to question the close relationship she had previously portrayed with her father, when in reality, she had not seen him for an extended period. A former friend of Gene Hackman, a director who had worked with him, commented that Gene was not the type to hide his health issues. In fact, he had openly shared his health problems with the media in the past. So why was his daughter unaware of her father's condition? Could there be a secret that she is unwilling to reveal? Another notable point is that immediately after her father's sudden death, Leslie requested to manage all of Gene's assets without informing any other family members about her decision. This became even more controversial, as Gene Hackman was always very private about his personal finances and had never left clear instructions for family members. Leslie even refused to share information about the estate with relatives, leading them to suspect that she was trying to keep Gene Hackman's vast fortune all to herself. Although Gene Hackman had openly shared his intentions regarding the distribution of his estate before his death, Leslie made a noticeable request to alter the will. She asked for adjustments to the portion of the estate that Hackman had planned to leave to other family members, while also adding the names of individuals who were not close to him to the list of heirs. The reason behind this was that the portion Hackman left to Leslie was not large enough, prompting her to cause a stir and request a redistribution of assets in order to secure a larger share for herself. After Gene's death, Leslie continued to attract public attention when she was spotted dining at an upscale restaurant with her sister, Elizabeth. What surprised everyone was that throughout the meal, Leslie smiled brightly and showed no signs of sadness or mourning over the significant loss. While everyone copes with grief in their own way, Leslie's behavior in this situation left many feeling confused and perplexed. While everyone expected her to take time to reflect and share her sorrow with family, she appeared calm, even cheerful. She chatted comfortably with her sister, laughed, and talked about everyday matters, which only fueled doubts about her true emotions. Many people who witnessed this scene began to doubt the sincerity of Leslie's emotions towards her father. They questioned whether she was trying to hide her true feelings or simply didn't feel deeply saddened by Gene Hackman's death. This became even more notable when compared to the reactions of other family members who were more reserved and less publicly expressive of their emotions. As the case continued, two main theories began to emerge. The first, a concerning theory, suggested that Leslie was fully aware of her father's health condition, but deliberately kept it hidden. She might have felt guilty for not being by his side in his final months. Or there could be another reason preventing her from revealing the truth. Gene Hackman's death remains shrouded in mystery, and her statements in court are just the beginning of a complex search for the truth. The second, stranger theory began to emerge as the story progressed. Could something have happened in Gene Hackman's final months that Leslie is trying to protect, hiding a secret? Everything surrounding the death of this Hollywood legend remains unclear, and the details surrounding Leslie's actions continue to raise numerous questions from the public and the family. One big question still remains unanswered. If Hackman was truly as healthy and sharp as Leslie claimed, why did he completely withdraw from the world? Why was no one other than Betsy Arakawa able to confirm his actual condition? And most importantly, why does Leslie seem so nervous and evasive when asked about her father's final months? This story clearly has many untold aspects, but one thing is certain. Leslie won't be able to hide the truth forever. When forensic investigators conducted the autopsies of Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa, the initial theories surrounding their deaths were quickly called into question. At first, police believed Hackman might have died due to old age and the final stages of Alzheimer's disease. But the circumstances surrounding Arakawa's death added complexity to the situation. She passed away suddenly, with no signs of struggle or external injury, only a frail body and a shattered bottle of pills on the floor. However, when the autopsy results were released, chilling details began to emerge, making everything more terrifying and harder to explain than ever before. The initial conclusion indicated that Gene Hackman died from a heart attack. Alzheimer's disease had weakened his body, causing his cardiovascular condition to deteriorate, and when no one was around, he passed away quietly without any signs of external force. Hackman died alone, sitting in a chair in the mudroom, possibly from exhaustion or a sudden heart attack. However, the most haunting aspect wasn't his death itself, but the absolute loneliness he had to endure in his final months, with no one there to care for or comfort him. When forensic experts examined Betsy Arakawa's body, they discovered a shocking detail. She had contracted a dangerous virus that can cause severe respiratory failure and weaken the internal organs. This virus is typically transmitted through contact with the feces, urine, or saliva of infected rodents, or by inhaling dust particles from rodent feces dispersed in the air. It can also be transmitted through contaminated food and drink, raising further suspicions about the cause of her death. What's terrifying is that this virus can develop in the human body without showing clear symptoms for many days. meaning Betsy could have been infected long before the illness fully manifested on her final day. The symptoms of the virus include a sudden high fever, severe difficulty breathing, muscle pain, prolonged fatigue, and rapid respiratory failure. When forensic investigators examined the living conditions in the house, they found numerous signs of rodents, which could have been the source of Arakawa's infection. However, the biggest unanswered question remains. When did she get infected? And more importantly, was this virus truly the primary cause of her death, or just a contributing factor in her tragic demise? Not only were Hackman and Arakawa affected, but even their 3 dogs were not spared from the impact. One dog died before the police arrived, with the cause still unclear. The remaining 2 dogs survived, but their health had significantly deteriorated, showing signs of dehydration and malnutrition. Veterinarians concluded that all 3 dogs exhibited signs of respiratory infections, possibly caused by an airborne virus in the house. However, the big question remains. How could such a luxurious mansion, always kept clean, become the ideal environment for a dangerous virus to develop and spread? As the FBI and the investigative team continued their search of the house, they discovered something unusual. The basement seemed to be absent from the original floor plan of the house. A police officer happened to spot an old wooden door in this area, a door that didn't appear in any construction documents. When they opened the door, a dark tunnel suddenly appeared before them. The air grew heavy and tense. What awaited them inside? With flashlights in hand, they began descending the stairs, each step making the space feel quieter. As the light reached the final wall of the tunnel, the group froze, their eyes locked on the scene before them. The investigators quickly noticed several details that couldn't be ignored. Hackman and his wife Betsy seemed to have been isolated in a strange way. Why would a couple with so many connections in Hollywood suddenly disappear from the public eye in their final months? Neighbors reported that they hadn't seen anyone come in or out of the Hackman house for weeks, which was in stark contrast to his previous habits. Hackman had often engaged in conversations with neighbors, but in recent months, he seemed to have vanished from the world. As the case heats up more than ever, Leslie, Hackman's only daughter, is forced to testify in court. She never imagined that one day she would have to answer questions about the mysterious death of her father. As the daughter of a legend, Leslie always portrayed a close relationship with her father, but the biggest question still remains unanswered. Did she truly not know about Hackman's condition, or is she hiding a shocking truth? And if she knows more than she's letting on, could her testimony change the entire case? With the newly revealed investigation documents, legal experts began to put forward a bold hypothesis. Leslie Hackman and her testimony could be the most crucial key to uncovering the truth behind the case. According to sources from the Santa Fe Police Department, Leslie had not seen her father in months, a significant period of time, especially considering his health condition. So how could she claim that Hackman was still healthy before his death? If Leslie truly didn't know about her father's late-stage Alzheimer's and serious heart condition, that would be a surprising neglect. And if she knew but still denied it, that would be a major shock, potentially opening up a new investigation into the deaths of Hackman and Arakawa. Hackman always kept his personal life private, especially when it came to his children, during interviews. In 1989, he shared with film critic John C. Tibbets that audiences felt close to him because he presented himself as an ordinary man, explaining, "I want to keep my personal life simple, so that when I'm in front of the art, I can let go and immerse myself in it." During an appearance on Larry King Live, Hackman reminisced about the early days of his career. When Larry King asked him about his transition from an obscure career to widespread success, Hackman admitted, "Honestly, I didn't handle it very well." I took care of my family, made sure they lacked for nothing, but I was too fascinated by Hollywood, its mystique. Even though I never really became part of it, I still felt fascinated because I was a part of it, and the feeling that I could be anyone and do anything I wanted. Hackman and Maltese welcomed their first child, son Christopher Allen Hackman, in 1960. In February 1984, Hackman sat down with journalist Lita Powell Drake for an interview about the film Misunderstood. When asked about his relationship with his son as Christopher had grown older, Hackman expressed that even though his son was in his 20s, they still maintained a close bond, and he felt grateful that he could still hug his son as he did when he was younger. Hackman shared that he never imagined that he and his son would reach a point where they would have to change how they expressed affection, where instead of hugging, they would be shaking hands. He believed that one of the biggest challenges in the films he worked on was confronting the coldness of not being aware of and lacking sensitivity to a child's need for affection and embrace from a father. In an interview in 2011, Hackman spoke about his experience as a father. When asked about the advice he had given to his son, Hackman admitted that his absence during the crucial years of his son's life had made it difficult for him to offer much guidance. Being frequently away on film shoots, while his son needed support and guidance, made it challenging for Hackman to come home and suddenly start giving orders to his son. Looking back on his journey as a writer, Hackman shared the early career aspirations of his son in an interview with Empire magazine in January 2020. He recalled that his son once dreamed of becoming an actor and was in New York, where Hackman wrote small monologues for him. His son was very excited about what he was doing and began exploring his creative passion as ideas continuously popped into his head, and he would write them down. Hackman made rare comments about his children in an interview with Irish Independent in August 2000, noting that they had helped him decide to continue acting rather than pursue a career behind the camera. After securing the rights to Silence of the Lambs, he had planned to make his directorial debut, but ultimately declined the opportunity, a decision he said he had no regrets about. He shared, "I didn't give it a second thought," and added, "My children helped me see that it wasn't the best thing for me." He also acknowledged that being the child of a famous person was difficult, adding, "I couldn't always be home with them as they grew up and lived in California. My success always weighed heavily on them." Despite having a complicated relationship with his father, Hackman's children loved him deeply and were shocked when they heard the news of his tragic death. Gene Hackman was once one of Hollywood's greatest icons, but in the final years of his life, he passed away in an eerie silence. Betsy Arakawa, a healthy woman, died from a rare disease. Leslie Hackman is the only one who could shed light on what really happened, but she seemed unaware of her father's condition. All these factors raise a big question. Are these just random events? Or is this a carefully orchestrated drama? For Leslie Hackman, the tragedy of losing both her father and stepmother is not only a personal loss, but also a scar that will never fade. The public is asking questions, the family is under pressure, and the media never lets go. Thank you all for watching until the end of the video. The case of Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa is still full of unanswered questions. Will the truth ever be revealed? And will we ever understand the secrets that the Hackman family has hidden? Stories like this always make us think and ask big questions about what's going on behind the spotlight. Be sure to stay tuned to our channel so you don't miss any updates on this case and other mysterious cases. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because the truth can always surprise us at any moment. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next video.